Wayne Rooney gives Manchester City penalty verdict after clear Phil Foden moment. Wayne Rooney reckons Manchester City should have been awarded a penalty in their 2-1 defeat to Newcastle United on Saturday evening. Wayne Rooney has argued that Manchester City were denied a clear penalty during their Premier League loss to Newcastle United. Ruben Dias' second-half equaliser wasn't enough for City at St James's Park, as a Harvey Barnes brace dealt Pep Guardiola's side their first defeat in 5 games. The outcome brought welcome relief for Howe, as his side increased their distance from the relegation zone. For Guardiola, it represented a significant blow to City's ambitions of overtaking Arsenal at the top of the league. The majority of the drama at St James's Park unfolded after the interval. However, the visiting City supporters reckoned they were owed a penalty before half-time when Fabian Schär challenged Phil Foden inside the area. Despite his historic rivalry with City fans, Rooney shares their opinion. He said on Match of the Day, "I think it is a penalty. I think it's good play from Manchester City. Jeremy Doku getting in the pocket, plays a lovely ball to Phil Foden. And from there you think he's maybe just snatched at it, but from this angle you see he's stretching for the ball, the defender comes across, clearly doesn't take the ball, and hits Phil Foden on top of his foot. So I think that's a penalty." MOTD host Mark Chapman attempted to clarify the rule the referee was following as he stated, "Where there is contact, following an attacker either passing the ball or taking a shot at goal, where the contact is inevitable or a consequence of momentum, play should typically be allowed to continue. Where the contact is either reckless or serious foul play, then a penalty kick should be awarded." Rooney replied, "Yeah, it's reckless. If you look at the moment of impact, the defender's leg is straight and it studs up, so it's a straight leg and studs on Phil Foden's foot. I think it's a clear penalty." The decision didn't swing in City's favour though, and Newcastle ultimately pocketed 3 points. If Arsenal beat Tottenham on Sunday, the Blues could be 7 points adrift. According to Sky Sports, Guardiola walked into the referee's room after the game. But when the City manager was quizzed on this, he said everything is fine and it is what it is. Regarding his team's performance at St James's Park, Guardiola told the media post-match, "We gave everything. We wanted to make a step like we have done in the last 2 months, but this is not an easy place to come after the international break. There is a long way to go. It was a tight game. Chances for both sides. Gigio was extraordinary. We missed chances and second half we conceded a goal. There were more chances for both sides, but we could not take the result." Guardiola's side host Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League next. City are undefeated in Europe so far this season, having won all their games, bar a 2-2 draw against AS Monaco. Their next Premier League game is a home fixture against newly promoted Leeds United. City have won the last 2 home games against Leeds, 9-1 on aggregate. Ruben Dias fumes in intense interview as he questions Manchester City decisions. Make it make sense. Manchester City were on the wrong end of a couple of dubious decisions in their defeat to Newcastle on Saturday. Ruben Dias was left scratching his head over a number of decisions that went against Manchester City in their defeat to Newcastle on Saturday evening. Phil Foden had a penalty appeal waved away after he was wiped out by Fabian Schär shortly after taking a shot. Then Gianluigi Donnarumma claimed he was fouled in the build-up to Harvey Barnes' second goal of the game. Neither decision was given as City went on to lose the game 2-1. Dias spoke after the game and he expressed his frustration at the calls. The City defender said Newcastle were the better team on the night and deserved to win the game, but he admitted he was baffled by some of the decisions that had been made. "Obviously, I feel like there was one in the first half with Phil. I feel like they were saying it was very clear," he told Sky Sports. "Only the second goal I feel like we need to make it make sense. Where is the sense in their player pushing our goalkeeper outside the goal? What are we allowing and for how long? It's more like sometimes you allow it and sometimes you don't. Where's the rule? What can you actually do? In the second goal, Gigio is in his place and he's being pushed out and there's no consequence, it's allowed. I didn't even realise on the pitch, I thought it was weird he was out of position, but I had the chance to see the review and Barnes is pushing him away from the goal. We're so picky with certain contacts, but one like this, you allow it? If this is the rule, that's fine. Let us do the same. Back in the day, this was a foul. Now apparently it's allowed. When you lose, people are going to say you find excuses, but it's nothing like that. Newcastle were better, they deserved the win, they finished more chances than us. So all I'm saying is, in terms of the rule, there needs to be a rule. I've just seen the image of the contact on Donnarumma and, yeah, City missed the chance to close the gap on rivals Arsenal to just 1 point with the defeat to Newcastle. Mikel Arteta's side face Tottenham on Sunday, and a win will see them extend their lead over City to 7 points. Chelsea's win against Burnley means City have dropped a place to third in the table. Manchester City, player ratings versus Newcastle with 3 5-10s, but Gianluigi Donnarumma, good Manchester City saw their 4-game winning run come to an end as they were beaten 2-1 by Newcastle at St James's Park. Manchester City missed the chance to close the gap to Arsenal at the top of the Premier League after losing a wild and chaotic game to Newcastle at St James's Park. The goals began to flow in the final half hour. Harvey Barnes fired Newcastle ahead with a smart finish, only for Ruben Dias to respond almost immediately. But Barnes made it 3 goals in 7 minutes when he tapped in from a recycled corner. Donnarumma, a trio of stunning saves from Walter made but still beaten in the end. Booked once again for protests after the second goal having been targeted at a corner. 7 Nunes, recovered well from a shaky start against Barnes, but still saw his direct opponent score twice. Not at his best going forward, but a difficult game for him. 6 Dias, scored City's equaliser while recovering from a knock that had drawn blood. Defended well and competed ferociously at times. 7 Guardiola. Amid the mayhem of the first half, he had his moments of calm, but found things tough as Walter Maid increasingly got in the game. 6 O'Reilly. Poor clearance for the first goal, and Guardiola told him just that. Some nice moments in possession, but hard to overlook that costly error. 6 Gonzalez. Found it almost impossible to get any control of the game, especially in the first half, and had Guardiola in his ear on a regular basis. 5 Silva. Excellent against Liverpool when he dictated the tempo, but couldn't repeat the trick here. Newcastle's midfield is physical, and the captain found it tough going. Foden. Should have had a penalty, but should have scored as well. Maybe City's best chance of the first half, and would have capped a superb move. Cherki. Laid that chance for Foden on a plate, but that was one of few moments of high class. Tried to be cute at times when it wasn't called for, and still learning when to play. 6 Doku. City's best attacking outlet in the first half, but drifted out of the game after the break. If there's a criticism, it's that he doesn't always back up his best performances. 6 Haaland. Contributed in his own box again, but had a rare off day in the opposition's. Should have scored at least twice in the first half. Had he done so, it would have been a different game. 5 Bob. Quick feet in the box, but shot blocked. 6 Marmush little time to make an impact. 6 not used Trafford, Kusanov, Stones, Aker, Ait-Nouri. Pep Guardiola and Manchester City avoid Premier League fine after making change. Pep Guardiola held an early morning press conference at Manchester City on Friday, and he brought it forward to avoid being fined by the Premier League. Pep Guardiola changed the time of his Manchester City press conference on Friday to avoid being hit in the pocket by the Premier League, having previously been on the receiving end of the governing body's strict sanctions. The City boss has held his last 2 press conferences at 2 p.m. on a Friday, but this falls 30 minutes after the league's cut-off, which mandates that all 20 clubs should have started their media conference by 1:30 p.m. on Friday, regardless of which day of the weekend their game takes place. The Blues received dispensation from the league to push back those press conferences ahead of games against Bournemouth and Liverpool. But with Guardiola arranging training for midday on Friday, he was keen to start at 2 p.m. once again, only to be warned off the idea. City and Guardiola feared a fine if they made it 3 late starts in a row, so instead the 54-year-old opted for a 9 a.m. start and walked into the Grand Media Auditorium at the City Football Academy at 8:57 a.m. with a spring in his step. The Catalan cut a relaxed figure in front of the media, joking with journalists that the early start was the fault of the Premier League and that he didn't want to risk being slapped with another fine. "We are training later, and if we train at 12 until 1:30, I cannot be here at the press conference in time," Guardiola said. "The Premier League don't allow me at 2 p.m. The club said if I don't start by 2 p.m, they will fine me or fine the club." City know how punitive the Premier League can be. having been fined £3.17 million in the last 2 seasons for coming out late at the start of games and after half-time. In the 2023/24 season, the Blues were hit with a fine of just over £2 million for delaying kick-off 22 times across their 38 matches. Last season, they were docked just over £1 million after doing so on 9 occasions. Most of the offences relate to City coming out late after half-time, but Guardiola joked that City's 2023 Champions League final was delayed by a pre-game show featuring Burna Boy and Anita, and that the pop stars didn't receive a fine. "We paid a lot of money as I'm late at half-time," he said. "Sometimes I arrive 1 minute later, but the rules are the rules and Premier League is impeccable for that, right? When we played in the Champions League final, they had a show before the game and they are always late. They have to find the singers. That is why I decided 9 a.m, and the journalists have had their breakfast and will need to take a coffee." Pep Guardiola makes bold Manchester City claim. "I don't have any doubts." Manchester City are well placed to mount a challenge on several fronts this season, and if his squad stays fit, Pep Guardiola is confident he can do it. Pep Guardiola has backed Manchester City to stay in the hunt for another treble this season, as long as he can keep his squad fit throughout the campaign. A year on from an injury crisis that derailed